What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Friday, October 17th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now, it is 16:26 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the US and from all over the world. So I want to start with this meeting that Trump had with Zelensky earlier this afternoon. They had a 45-minute lunch, which is very interesting because Trump was on the phone with Putin for 2.5 hours yesterday. And then today, Trump only meets with Zelensky for 45 minutes, and they only had a lunch call. So clearly, Trump does not truly respect Zelensky's time. Zelensky literally flew here to meet with Trump. Trump actually invited him. Okay, so clearly Putin was getting scared of the Tomahawks going to Ukraine, and he scrambled to call Trump right before Zelensky arrived. But I don't think this is going to lead to any kind of peace deal or any kind of ceasefire. This is just a delaying tactic by Putin. He just wants to delay the weapons from going to Ukraine while he rebuilds his military and prepares to attack Europe and launch another big offensive against Ukraine. But I want to just summarize everything that Trump said today and yesterday with both Putin and Zelensky. And this just shows you how bipolar Trump is. One day he's talking about how Russia's a paper tiger, how Ukraine can take back all the land, how we're going to give them Tomahawk missiles, how he's disappointed in Putin, how Putin's killing Russians and Ukrainians every single day by the thousands. And then suddenly Putin calls him, and the next day he's just like a dog with his tail between his legs, basically afraid to call out Putin in front of the reporters. I mean, just really bizarre behavior, okay? But this is what we can expect with Trump going forward, this bipolar behavior. He's very hard to predict because he changes his mind 1,000 times a day, all right? And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP Shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP Shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video. So one of the most interesting things that Trump said during his lunch with Zelensky was right towards the end of the lunch. He dropped an F-bomb on national television, okay? This was actually recorded by the whitehouse.gov website. And in my opinion, I know a lot of you ultra MAGA people are not going to like this. I don't think a U.S. president should be dropping the F-bomb publicly. Privately, he could do whatever he wants, but it makes the president not look so good. And also, kids could be watching, okay? So I don't think that's right for him to do. But basically, when he was asked about Maduro at the end of the lunch, he said he doesn't want to F around with the United States, okay? So very, very concerning. It looks like Trump is about to launch an attack on Venezuela. Trump also said that the latest attack on a vessel in the Caribbean was a drug-carrying submarine, and he said he doesn't know of any innocent people who would have a submarine. Trump also said he is very interested in Ukrainian drones, and one of the things potentially they were discussing was sort of like a drones for Tomahawks deal, where Ukraine would either produce or give the U.S. drones in exchange for Tomahawk missiles, because Zelensky said Ukraine has a lot of drones, but they don't have long-range missiles. So they have a gap, and the U.S. has a gap with drones. So that's one of the things they were going to discuss with Trump. Trump said one of the reasons he wants to end the war in Ukraine is due to all the weapons the U.S. has to give Ukraine to keep them fighting, which has been depleting U.S. stockpiles. Trump said he would be talking about Tomahawks and long-range missiles with Zelensky. Trump, when asked if he still thinks Ukraine can take back all the land from Russia, said war is very interesting, you never know, but he refused to make a definitive comment publicly, okay, and that was after obviously talking to Putin. All right, so he tucked his tail between his legs. The Russians are laughing at Trump. Okay, they are laughing at Trump. They think Trump is a P-U-S-S-Y, all right, because Trump talks tough, and then as soon as Putin calls him, suddenly he's the biggest P-U-S-S-Y, all right, and the Russians know that they can string Trump along and have these constant peace talks that go nowhere, okay, perpetual peace talks that do nothing but buy Russia time. Okay, that's what Putin wants. He wants to buy Russia time. He does not want Ukraine to get American weapons and have the full force of the U.S. military supporting Ukraine. Okay, because that would mean a collapse of his military in Ukraine. Zelensky said he hopes Trump can manage a ceasefire in Ukraine like Trump did in Gaza. Trump said Putin and Zelensky hate each other and it will be hard to get them together in a room. He also said that Biden was grossly incompetent. He also said he spoke to Putin for 2.5 hours and went into a lot of details with Putin. He also said he's going to try to get Zelensky and Putin into a meeting in Hungary. And the Estonian government has decided to completely close traffic on one of the roads passing through a border crossing with Russia in the Satsi-But region of Estonia. That's in southeastern Estonia. This is a part of Russia that kind of sticks out into Estonia, and there's an Estonian road that goes through this piece of Russian territory. So Estonians, up until now, were allowed to literally drive through Russia to get through this little piece of Russian territory and get to the other side into Estonia, and Russia did that as a courtesy, but now Russia deployed troops there, so they've effectively shut that crossing off, and now Estonia has completely closed traffic on that road. And during a recent visit to the United States, a Ukrainian delegation, which included the Prime Minister Yulia Siverdenko, the National Security Council Secretary Rustem Umerov, the First Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Kislitsia, and Ukraine's Ambassador Olga Stefanishnia, met with executives of Raytheon and Lockheed Martin this week. Now, Raytheon produces the Tomahawk missile, and Lockheed produces the Typhoon ground-based system to launch the Tomahawk. Okay, so will Ukraine start buying Tomahawks and Typhoons from the United States? That's very, very possible. It seems like that's where Trump is going with this. And according to the Washington Post, helicopters from the U.S. 160th SOAR, that's the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They're a highly secretive airlift regiment for special ops, for black ops, for direct action missions with Delta Force and Navy SEALs and other Tier 1 units. And they were involved in the operation to take out bin Laden. Apparently, the 160th SOAR flew just 100 miles from the Venezuelan border in the last couple of days. Wow. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from NYPrepper Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video. And Marco Rubio revealed that UFOs have been detected flying over restricted nuclear facilities, and they are not ours, according to the trailer of the documentary The Age of Disclosure. So this documentary is coming out soon, and Rubio will be discussing this in the documentary. Now, one thing about Rubio is before he was the Secretary of State, and now he's the National Security Advisor as well to Trump. Okay, so that means Rubio has access to pretty much everything. And even before that, Rubio was on the, I believe, Intelligence Committee, on the Senate Intelligence Committee or National Security Committee, one of those. So he's been looking at top secret info for years, okay, because he's been on that committee. So if anybody knows about UFOs, it's him. And for him to say that publicly is interesting. It seems like our government is preparing to make a big disclosure soon, okay, which would also be a huge distraction as well. And the Taliban tested a missile recently with a 400-kilometer range. And obviously the Taliban got that missile from Iran, more than likely. I highly doubt that the Taliban was able to make their own missiles, okay? Basically like a Scud missile. And the U.S. has reportedly rejected a Venezuelan proposal for Maduro to leave office within 3 years, turning his presidency over to the vice president of Venezuela. So the U.S. rejected that proposal. So Venezuela said, listen, don't invade us. Maduro will step down after 3 years, and that wasn't good enough for Trump. And since August, Ukrainian drones have carried out at least 58 strikes on key Russian energy facilities, some reaching up to 2,000 kilometers deep into the country. By mid-August, the attacks had disabled about 17% of Russia's oil refining capacity, rising to 21% by the end of the month. Wow, that's a lot. And Trump said he plans to discuss a new planned offensive by Ukraine with Zelensky. That would have been today. And Ukraine said they are ready to conduct an offensive if they get more Western arms. This was reported by a Ukrainian official. And Trump said he's going to be creating a Ukraine Victory Fund. It will be financed by the new high tariffs against China. And Trump stated that he is not against new sanctions against Russia, but now may not be the right time for them. Okay, so Trump is afraid of putting sanctions on Russia. Meanwhile, he's putting 100% tariffs on China. Okay, so Trump looks like a PUSSY. I'm sorry, guys. I know a lot of you love Trump, but he looks like a PUSSY. Putin clearly is making an ASS out of him, okay? And I wanted to summarize the phone call that Trump had with Putin. So Putin congratulated Trump on the Middle East peace progress. He also said that he was thankful for Melania for her involvement with the missing Ukrainian children. Trump said he believes that this will help in ending the Russia-Ukraine war, the phone call. He also said that he discussed trade with Putin after the war ends, and they agreed to hold high-level advisor meetings next week led by Rubio on the U.S. side. Trump said that great progress was made in this phone call. Interesting. So we'll have to wait and see if Russia actually follows through, and if we don't see more massive attacks on Ukraine in the coming days. Just in the last hour, I got some alerts for air raids in Ukraine again. So, Russia may just launch a huge attack this weekend. I mean, literally right after talking to Trump. And maybe Trump doesn't really care about Ukraine getting attacked. I don't think he truly cares. I don't think he really truly cares about all the drone attacks, hundreds and hundreds of drones bombarding cities. It doesn't seem like that really matters to him a whole lot. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm very skeptical of any peace deal happening. Very skeptical. And even if there is, it's not going to last. That's for sure. Okay, because for Putin, Ukraine was never the end goal. Ukraine was just the beginning of a series of moves against the West. Okay, Ukraine was the first big move, and now Putin wants to take the Baltics. He wants a land bridge to Kaliningrad. He wants to restore the Soviet Union. Okay, and the Baltics were a part of the Soviet Union, and there's a lot of Russians there. Okay, and right now Kaliningrad is isolated geographically, which hurts Kaliningrad's economy. So he needs a land bridge to Kaliningrad to protect the economy there and to have a land connection to the Baltic fleet, okay? And the Russian FSB, that's the new KGB, claims that the drone sightings in Europe were a false flag operation by NATO to blame Russia. And the FSB is also saying that the British, together with Ukraine, are preparing to sabotage the Turk Stream pipeline. This is a pipeline that goes from Russia through the Black Sea to Turkey. Interesting. And the Finnish Minister of Defense said that Russia is preparing for the second phase of military aggression and is increasing troops near the EU borders. Wow. And U.S. contractors, not Ukrainian troops, would likely operate and maintain Tomahawk missiles if they are supplied to Ukraine. A senior Western official told the Financial Times that this approach minimizes escalation risks and prevents sensitive technology from being transferred. Limited Ukrainian training is expected because Tomahawks require complex navigation and targeting systems. So, guys, the Ukrainians mastered the Patriot missiles, okay? The Ukrainians have actually used the Patriot missiles more than we have. There's literally never any situation where we've had to use Patriot missiles against such a wide variety of targets like the Ukrainians have. I mean, they've been using them on a monthly basis for the last 2 years against hypersonic missiles, against short-range missiles, against cruise missiles, against fighter jets, against drones. All right, you remember when Ukraine first got the Patriot missiles and Russia actually tried to target them? And they launched like every single variety of missile that they had at the Patriot launcher, and the Patriot system shot down every single one of them. The U.S. cannot even operate its own Patriot missiles as good as Ukraine can, because now Ukraine has more experience with our own air defenses than we have. Okay, so if the Ukrainians can do that with Patriot missiles, which are way more difficult to learn and to use, they can easily learn to launch Tomahawks, which are basically just fire and forget offensive missiles. They're pre-programmed with a flight pattern, and there's really not much you need to do. You don't have to guide it. You don't have to do anything. All right. And we're hearing that Venezuela scrambled their own F-16s in response to the U.S. B-52s that flew near Venezuela earlier in the week. And I want to remind you guys that we did have that record-long nuclear code earlier in the week, 288 characters. And that was right around the same time as those 3 B-52s took off from Barksdale and flew down to Venezuela, right off the coast of Venezuela. Okay, so I think Trump really wants to bomb Maduro and oust Maduro and replace him with Machado. She is the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize this year, and she was the winner of the election, and then Maduro cheated and reelected himself. And we're hearing that Trump has until the first week in November before his war powers resolution expires in the Caribbean and potentially in Venezuela. So the war powers resolution is a law that requires presidents to obtain permission from Congress when they're conducting any military operations that kind of fall in that gray zone between war, like all-out war, and between like contingencies where the president has to quickly respond to something and there's no time to go to Congress and debate, should we go to war, should we not? It's in that gray zone area, like these operations against the cartels or operations against Al-Qaeda. They had to use war powers resolution, and I believe it expires every 60 days. So it's possible that this could motivate Trump to attack Venezuela before it expires, because then he would have to go back to Congress and get another extension for 60 more days. And a lot of these strikes on the vessels in the Caribbean have not been popular. Initially, they were kind of popular, but now they're starting to fade in popularity among just the general population here in the U.S. We even had Rand Paul speak out against these strikes, okay? So it's possible that when he goes to get an extension, they may not give it to him, all right? Because now everybody knows he wants to bomb Venezuela, he wants to change the regime, and then he wants to bomb these boats in the Caribbean, so people may be against that. They don't want the escalation, and they may say, no, we're not going to extend it. So that may motivate Trump to do something by November 1st, okay? And the New York Times is reporting that the Pentagon already developed plans for the possible sale or transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. However, the transfer has not yet been confirmed. A key difficulty in the transfer is that Tomahawks are typically launched from ships or submarines. Ukraine would need a ground launch system such as the Typhon system. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But wanted to just show you some interesting flights here over the U.S. last night. We had a nuclear war command and control plane flying up and down the entire Pacific coast of North America. Check it out. It took off from Travis Air Force Base, their West Coast home base, flew all the way up to Alaska and the Yukon, and then flew all the way back down, hugging the coast of British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon. This is extremely unusual. And these planes are responsible for remotely launching all of our Minuteman III ICBMs from the air. And their most important job is to send nuclear codes to our submarines. That's the only way the submarines can get codes is from these planes. All right, because the submarines are underwater, so they can't use regular like satellite communication and standard radio communication. They need to use what's known as VLF, or very low frequency, to be able to go through 1,000 feet of water. And that's what these planes do. They have a huge antenna that's like a mile long, and they deploy the antenna and they fly in circles, and then they can transmit the very low frequency messages to the subs. Okay, they're relay planes, but they're not just relay planes, they're also capable of launching our nukes from the air. If, for example, some of the commanders in the missile sites in Montana, Wyoming, or North Dakota get cold feet and they don't want to launch because they don't want to be responsible for launching nuclear missiles, then they can override the commanders in the missile sites, the launch facilities, and they can remotely launch from the air through the airborne launch control system. And here's another screenshot of this flight. Flew all the way up to Ketchikan. And then we also had another U.S. Navy sub-hunter patrolling off the coast of Russia's northern fleet in Murmansk. This is where Russia has 2/3 of their nuclear-armed submarines. Okay, this is their primary nuclear-armed sub base up there in Yagelnaya Naval Base. And this is the second night in a row that a sub-hunter was there. Here's a closer shot. You can see it looping. I mean, looks like literally 20 miles off the coast of Murmansk. And then here was yesterday, 2 nights ago actually. So 2 nights in a row. They're obviously trying to see what Russia's nuclear posture is like. And interestingly, this is right around the time when Trump had that phone call with Putin. So they want to see if Russia was escalating their nuclear posture ahead of the announcement that they were going to give Tomahawks to Ukraine. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight, closer to midnight, live, doing some live updates and live monitoring. But just get prepared, guys. I'm very skeptical of all these peace deals. I feel like they're more like patch-up jobs, you know, sort of like if you have a big crack in your wall and you don't want to address the crack, and you just take some tape and you run some tape over the crack and then paint over it rather than replacing the whole panel. I feel like that's what Trump has been doing with all these peace deals. They're just like, you know, duct taping and patching up all these different wars. They're just patch-up jobs, and they're not addressing the root causes. They're just patch-up jobs, and patch-up jobs never last, okay? If you don't address the root cause of a problem, you can patch it up, which will delay, you know, the inevitable, but it's not going to fix the problem, okay? And I feel like that's what Trump's been doing with the Gaza peace deal. Now with Ukraine, he wants these quick patch-up jobs, just slap the duct tape on it and then go back to Mar-a-Lago for the weekend and not think about it, okay? That's what he's been doing. So don't expect any miraculous peace, guys. We're living in the end times, and the Bible says that things are only going to progressively get worse and worse. And if there is any kind of peace in Ukraine or the Middle East, you have to be extremely skeptical about how long it'll last. But that's it for now. Follow me on Twitter. I've been posting a lot over there. My Twitter handle is @NYPrepper1. The link is in the description down below. Also, check out some of my sponsors to support the channel. I have a bunch of different discounts from Just In Case Holsters, American-made holsters. I have My Patriot Supply. They're doing a deal on their 3-month food supply. I have EMP Shield, which I've installed into my own truck. I have a bunch of other sponsors. I have a gold sponsor, Alpha Omega Gold Group. So check them out, support the channel, get yourself something at a discounted rate. And until later on, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.